Welcome back to Panic-Butter. If this is your first time joining us, hit the subscribe button. Leave a comment, sit back, get ready. Today, we're focusing on time travel. What is it? Where is it? Let's dive in. There's a lot of interesting stuff to come up. Sit back, here we go.
Hello, my name is Alfred Bielik, more commonly known as Al Bielik. Original family name is Edward Cameron. I have been involved in the Philadelphia experiment, the Montauk Project, time travel, alien connections of the Montauk Project, and some other projects, all of which have been secret over the years, most of which have never been declassified. I wound up in the 28th century, and this was in a time period of 2749 to 2751 AD. Talk about changes in civilization, society, and everything else. It was drastically changed from what we saw in 2137, as this is now 600 years later. The cities were enormous, the cities were beautiful. They had ground-based cities, much as we have always had them, but they also had something else, floating cities. Floating cities, due to anti-gravity techniques being perfected sufficiently that they could float an entire city, which was perhaps not as large as any of our current cities. It was round, or very nearly round, but it floated on this platform and they could move the city any place they wanted, remaining floating in the air, 4,000 or 5,000 feet above the ground perhaps, or a little less, depending on what they wanted. But the size of the city was vertical rather than horizontal, 2,200 stories high. That's about 2.5 miles. The cities could move anywhere on the planet. Basically, they stayed hovering and floating. If they didn't like a particular location, they moved somewhere else. There wasn't that much traffic in moving cities, I can assure you, because the world population in that era, the 28th century, was only 500 million, and I was instructed later that was where they had held it for centuries. There would be no more than approximately 500 million population. Some of the features of this, let's start from the political standpoint. As I learned, all of these cities, whether they're ground-based cities, which the majority were, because they had to do manufacturing, they had to have agriculture and various other things to supply the needs of civilization. But all of them, whether floating or ground-based, were rather interesting in their governmental form. They had essentially no government. There's no government as we know it today. There was no money, there's no banks, there's no political jurisdictions, and it resolved down to what would be best called a city-state structure, where the city is the state, and any other cities from that one are independent and operate in their own independent manner. So that was the major change there. There was no elected government, there was no appointed government, there was no government as we had ever seen it in the past. As I found out, each city was run by an intelligent computer, synthetic intelligence, synthetic consciousness, a highly radioactive crystalline structure. Who built them, I had no idea. Nobody seemed to know, but they've been there for hundreds of years. And this computer ran the entire city. There were guidelines set down, there were law books, but no courts. There were guidelines set down as to how you're to behave, what your parameters were. Within these parameters, anything went. Anything was not considered kosher within this realm, this parameter limit, would be expressed as a yellow zone, i.e. a zone that you don't want to go into and you don't want to become involved in that type of behavior. If you got out into that area, you were given an invite for a reprimand to the computer, which there was one in every city, running each city. You would literally be called in for shall we say, an interview or an audience with the computer, and you would be advised that you had broken the law, but it wasn't considered a felony, it was a misdemeanor. And such. If you were judged guilty, you were sent off to one of the work camps for whatever purpose they did in the work camps. Very much like today, I presume, where any kind of labor, menial or otherwise, had to be done was done. And that was compulsory, that was not voluntary. If you were called in because you had gone outside the yellow zone into what is called the red zone, which is basically what you would today call a felony offense, you were immediately called in for an interview. You were examined, looked at, talked to, and if the computer at that point thought that you were rehabilitable, that you could learn again to be sociable and within the social bounds of normalcy, you were given one more chance. If the computer decided that you were not capable of fitting into society, you were terminated right then and there. Now, there were other people who didn't feel like they could fit into the society, but had not yet committed any of the so-called offenses. Literally, they were allowed to leave. The word was, if you don't like it here, go live somewhere else. Go out in the boonies if you want, live as a hermit. We don't care. And many did. I do not know what percentage. I was told that quite a lot of people had left the cities and gone out in the boondocks. Whether they formed communities or not, I never did find out. If you weren't required to work, which no one was required to, other than their social obligation, which was well inculcated into the kids, that you had an obligation to contribute to society, to pay for what you have been using and had inherited, for which no money was involved. A sort of credit system was still functional, but otherwise, except for fairly large credit purchases, if that is the right term, they didn't really keep track of very much. It was considered quite free as long as you were able to make some contributions and nobody overloaded the system with demands. That happened very seldom, that there was an overload of demand for goods or services. So as a result of that, there was very little abuse of the system. Now, in this period of time, talking with many people, making friends, I had a number of questions. Who built this computer system? That was my first and foremost question. Who maintains it? What happens when it breaks down? Very common questions. No common answer. Very much uncommon answers. First question about the cities, who built them, who maintains them, who maintains the computers, was rather hard to answer and get an answer to. No one really knew much about the history of the construction of the city or how it ran, other than the computer, and you couldn't request an interview. You couldn't request to go in and ask questions. The aspect of how these computers communicated with each other was unknown, but it did make, the one I talked with did make a number of interesting statements over a period of time. They had been around for about 250 years in this format and this system.
Wow, that was a lot to unpack. What do you think? If you could travel forward in time, what would be the one thing that you'd want to do just in case you went back? Tattoo today's lottery numbers on your arm? Something to think about. Let's see where we're at next. Bring it on.
Have you heard the theory that the Trumps are time travelers?
Grab me a DeLorean.
This connects to Nikola Tesla.
No way!
Nikola Tesla died, and within his hotel that he had 80 plus trunks of all his patents, his designs for different technologies, all this stuff. Guess who they sent first to go and collect the stuff?
I don't know.
John G. Trump. Donald Trump's uncle.
What?
Weird.
So the theory is that he took some of these trunks.
Oh no.
Oh no.
But Tesla said that he had figured out how to bend time. So
As one does.
the theory is Donald Trump's uncle took this, created a time machine.
Oh my gosh.
And then the weird connection is there was a book that came out in 1896, and it's called Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey.
You're saying
Do you know
it was actually Baron
do you know what the book was about?
what?
Time travel?
Baron Trump time traveling.
No!
Yeah, that was about the story. Look that book up. See what's up. That's worth reading right there. Probably online. Get it. Think about it. What would you write down if you could go forward that you know that you would remember or be able to bring back with you? Leave a comment below.
One day someone's going to invent a time machine, and that when they invent a time machine, all time ceases to become linear. So you think if you have a time machine, well, I'll just go back to the time where they were making the pyramids and I'll watch them do it. That's not what it works like. You can't travel where there are no roads. So once a road gets built, then you can travel. So once a time machine gets invented, then anyone from the invention of the time machine forward to forever can come back to that moment and can go to any point in time from that moment to the end of time. So all time ceases to be linear. So there's no like tomorrow will be Wednesday and the next day will be Thursday. No. It's everything happens everywhere all at once. You can never own anything because someone could just travel through time and take it away from you when you weren't looking. Like as time travel gets more and more sophisticated, you can go back and forth in time while you're talking to people.
Ooh, man, that's seriously makes your mind hurt when you think about it. You could spend all day. Serious brain cramp there. Where are we going next? Maybe forward in time.
Imagine time travel not as a risky venture, but as a kind of cosmic deja vu. Aussie physicist Germain Tobar threw a curveball at the usual time travel warnings. He suggests that time isn't a one-way street, it's more like a loop. So if you try to tweak something in the past, the universe somehow readjusts to keep things on track. Forget the complicated math. Tobar's idea is like time having a built-in reset button. It challenges the usual sci-fi tales that meddling with the past could lead to chaos. Instead, his theory says the universe is pretty chill about it, making sure things unfold as they should. So, if you zipped back to prevent a virus outbreak, according to Tobar's concept, the outbreak might still find a way to happen. The mystery of how it all works adds an extra layer of fascination to the time travel debate. It's like the universe has its own rules, and Tobar just gave us a peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, that's crazy. There's too much to think about with this. You could spend all day, all night, all year, then you would wish you could go back in time so you wouldn't have to do it again. Where are we next?
Donald Trump's great-grandfather, he was part of the FBI team that confiscated and took all of Nikola Tesla's inventions, blueprints, and wiped his whole house.
What the hell? No.
Now, Nikola Tesla, obviously there was rumors all the time about he was onto some next technology with frequency and maybe even time travel.
So how would he know this?
So, what? And this book was written in 1869. But what's crazy, there's another man.
See? It's something everybody's talking about. You gotta look it up. You gotta read that book. Find out. Is Donald Trump a time traveler? Did his family get the information from Tesla? What was in the trunks? Let's move to the next one.
These are the different types of time travel as I understand it. First category I have is alternate timelines. This is for movies like The Avengers or Back to the Future. So the main thing with this one is that the past can be changed. Let's say you go from here to here. You time travel back and change something, a new timeline with new possibilities branches off. The time travel is almost instantaneous, and each time you go back, you branch off a new timeline. Personally, don't really like this one because it can get really messy, and even if there's a happy ending, someone can go back and change it all. Up next, we have Groundhog's Day. The premise of this one is that you always start at the same point. You can make different decisions, but then you just get sent back in time. Basically, you're stuck in that loop until you have the correct series of decisions to break the cycle. Finally, we have the best one, the single timeline, which the best example is probably Harry Potter 3. Cool thing about this one is that you can't actually change the past. Let's say you go from here to here, and then jump back in time and move forward again. Everything only actually happened once, but for this period of time, there were two versions of you around. Now let's say your travel back in time isn't instantaneous, it still takes time. That's the movie Tenet. Again, it's all one timeline, one series of events, but for this portion, there's actually three versions of you. If it helps, I like to think of it as a bunch of loops that work together to form a single line.
Everybody has a theory. What's yours? Can you go back, and would you? There's got to be something everybody wants to change at one time or another. The question is, can you? Let's go to the next one and see.
Okay, I have an even crazier one for you. Did you know that there was a novel written in the 1800s entitled Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey? They are saying that this is proof that Donald Trump is a time traveler. Stick with me. So this novel was written by Ingersoll Lockwood in 1998, and she also had a book called The Travels and Adventures of Little Baron Trump and His Wonderful Dog Bulger, which was followed up by Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey. And her last book published, riddle me this, Batman, was entitled 1900 or The Last President. So follow me on this one. So Little Baron Trump in this novel was referred to as being from a very wealthy family and lives on Fifth Avenue in New York City. Hello. He lived in something called Trump's Castle. And if you guys all don't know, the Trump Tower is on Fifth Avenue. These are snippets from the book right here. You can read it for yourself. He takes a series of wild adventures through other dimensions, and it's like this whole time travel thing that Baron Trump is going through. And in order to get to these other dimensions, he is followed by a mystical character named Don. Yes, that was Don. And apparently to find this portal to the world within a world is what it was called, they eventually led them to Russia. we're not even making this up. They say this was a take on Alice in Wonderland because it became really famous, and this was just like another spin-off of it. In Lockwood's final novel, 1900 or The Last President, begins with the scene of New York City in chaos. It's early November and a hugely unpopular outsider candidate has just won the election for the presidency. Police officers are in the streets trying to calm the growing rioters as mobs of vast size are organizing under the lead of anarchists and socialists and threaten to plunder and deposit the houses of rich who have wronged and oppressed them for so many years. The Fifth Avenue Hotel will be the first to feel the fury of the mob. Are you guys listening to this? So that's Trump's castle on Fifth Avenue. So this is Baron Trump in the book. Look at him. In the book, they say he's a man of few words, which we all know Baron Trump kind of is. But did you know this? So John Trump is the uncle of Donald Trump, and he was an engineer who worked for MIT at the time of Tesla. Now, this is real. This is like in real time right now. Is that crazy? So Donald Trump is the nephew to a person who worked in congruence with Tesla. He was also asked by the government to look through all of Tesla's stuff and tell them if it was important or not. Are you kidding me? And some of Tesla's writings were about time travel. So guess who John Trump left all of this stuff to? Just guess. Mr. 45, Mr. Donald Trump. Oh my God, I should have made this 10 minutes. So long story short, this could be proof that Donald Trump is a time traveler. There should be a part 2.
Yeah, everybody's got it on their mind. You could talk about this topic all day long. See, I knew you weren't going to get the book and read it. That's why we watched more people get their thoughts, their opinions. Next.
Is this actual proof that time travel is already possible? In 2006, a man named Sergey Ponomarenko appeared out of nowhere. He claimed that while walking down a street, a flash of light transported him to this location. Obviously, the police thought he was crazy, but when they asked to see his ID, everything seemed to check out, except that the ID was issued from a country that no longer existed, the Soviet Union. When asked about where he really came from, he simply said, "It might be better to look at the photos from my camera." This is where things got weird, because the film on his camera once developed showed Sergey with a girl in front of buildings from the past that didn't exist anymore. Even though Sergey mysteriously vanished from his holding cell 4 days later, official records showed a Sergey Ponomarenko who was reported missing in the 1960s. And when the authorities tracked down the lady in the photo, who was now 70 years old, she simply said, "Sergey, I haven't seen him since 1958. So
what happened to him? That's pretty crazy. That's more of a well-documented case and not something that just somebody made up. See where it takes us next.
We are actually living in the year 1726. In 1991, a German historian named Hermann Eilig gave his theory called the phantom time hypothesis, which argued that the years 814 through 911 AD never actually happened. Well, you see, he claimed that these years were fabricated by Holy Roman Emperor Otto III, Pope Sylvester II, and Byzantine Emperor Constantine VII, who altered documents and converted the Gregorian calendar so that they could fast forward time to the sacred year of 1000 AD. It was done so that Otto's ruling years could start in the millennial year 1000 AD, which would sound much better and be more credible. This theory is also supported by the fact that, despite there being written records, many artifacts from those 297 years were never found. And if we look at how Torturia was erased from existence, it is not difficult for the elites to change history again. So it could be that.
It could be too much to think about. That something for another day. What year is it? Man, where are we going next? Let's see. What would you still take back if you could go forward in time? Leave a comment below.
You are about to see evidence brought forth from a man who met himself in the future, 2042, and he seems to have the evidence to back it up. Back in 2006, Akan came home to discover a terrible leak within his house. As he investigated further, he grabbed his tools and commenced to fixing his situation.
I opened the cabinet door, which is access to alibi plumbing. As I crawled through the door, I kept going and kept going and kept going, and the tunnel finally opened up. I knew that it was not the same as when I went in. That is when I discovered myself.
Khan had brought his mobile phone with him as always, and he used this opportunity to record the conversations he had with himself, the comparisons he had with himself, and capturing the moment. He very much seems to have brought the receipts and irrefutable evidence of his journey.
Well, he's got a tattoo, so he knows the importance of the tattoo. He could have tattooed the lottery numbers on his arm when he went back. He would then have the receipts to prove that was him in the future, wouldn't it? That's what I think. What do you think? Next.
Know that Michael Jackson was a time traveler. You don't believe me? Just bear with me. Here's the man himself. And here's a mysterious old painting dating back to 17th century Germany. Looks similar, right? Wanna see something more interesting? His likeness also crops up on this ancient Egyptian statue, dating back over...
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. There's never more information. It's just enough to make you go, what? Wait a minute, what did I just see? Well, let's go see what we see next.
Listen to this crazy story of the time traveler Rudolph Fentz. So apparently this guy came out of nowhere in June 1950, and he was seen with strange sideburns, and he dressed like he came from the 1800s. This was in the middle of Times Square, New York. This was around 11:15 at night, and people were shocked to see him wandering through the streets. No one knows where he came from, and he seemed completely disoriented. Almost immediately, he was killed by a taxi driver. Yet in the morgue, while trying to identify him and check his belongings, the coroner was surprised by what he found in the man's pockets. The mysterious man had an old wallet that was filled with old-fashioned bills, and his identification said his name was Rudolph Fentz. He also had a letter addressed to him that was dated June 1876. So then the New York Police Department started to look into it, and they found a Rudolph Fentz Jr. In the phone book that had died 5 years earlier. Yet the widow was still alive, so they contacted her, and she said that her husband's father had disappeared in 1876 when he was 29 years old. According to reports, he had left home that night and never returned, and no one ever knew what happened to him. To date, this remains one of the greatest mysteries of possible time travel.
Yeah, if you go forward in time, keep your eyes open. Get the heck out of the way. Don't want to be a pancake like that dude. If that's true. That's pretty crazy. Let's see where we're going next.
He's looking for something. Okay. He can't find it. And then there, he find it. And now, as you can see, there is a flashing light. Now look closely right here. Look closely right here. Watch what happened. Here it is. Watch. Look. There it is. He's gone. There it is.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. Where did he go? Was it real? Did he ever come back? Is there a part 2? Is there more to the security camera than what we just saw? That's the question. But let's see what's up next.
Did this man get stuck in the past? In 1995, Mike Markham set out to create a time machine. His idea was to use compact lasers to reduce the air pressure going in either pole direction. Mike was a recluse and worked tirelessly on his invention. On one occasion, he even caused a citywide blackout. However, it might have benefited him as he garnered some attention and received anonymous donations to help fund his invention. When asked about what he would bring if he could time travel, he simply replied, "My cell phone." However, in 1997, Mike and his work mysteriously disappeared without a trace. Soon afterwards, a news story was uncovered from the 1930s, claiming that an unrecognizable man was found crushed in a metal tube on a California beach, and the only thing found with the body was a cell phone from the 1990s. So,
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. If you had to go back in time, why would you want to take something that didn't exist then? Wouldn't work. Look cool. You would be the person with something nobody else had. Unfortunately, it wouldn't work. So was it real? You decide.
So does anyone believe in portals and in the possibility of traveling to different worlds or even different dimensions through portals? So did this man really travel to a different point on Earth, or a different planet, or even a different dimension? What do you believe?
Light can't really get through. You're not going to feel anything, you're not going to smell anything until the surface is literally moved. This portal becomes self-sustaining for life beyond. Are you going to go through it? Taking samples of this water. It's unbelievable. It's so warm. It's almost like it's just untainted. You can't see it because the clouds are covering it, but there are two suns right off there. One, and there's a lesser sun like right there. I think it's still Earth. It's just Earth in a different time, maybe. There it is. Two suns. Crazy. Beautiful.
That's pretty crazy. If you found a portal like that, would you go through? What's on the other side? What if you could see through it, but you hadn't gone through it yet? What would that make you do? Put some crazy thoughts in your head. You had a pretty good time. Thanks for joining us. If you're new, hit that subscribe button. We will see you in the next one.